Jeff, what are we to make of John Hightower's status with his team? I mean, his rookie year, he's in 13 games, 346 snaps for Doug Peterson last year, 11 snaps buried on the practice squad. And when they could have activated him for that playoff game against Tampa, they activated another wide receiver. I mean, does he have a shot to make this team?
Gunnar, I love it, man. You're such a football guy. Like,
thank you.
Talking about the rookie quarterback and John Hightower. And again, another funny thing. He was a guy I'm watching. I'm like, Hightower is still here. Like,
see what I mean?
Unbelievable. Happy Thursday. Thanks for hanging with us. Hour number 2 of Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. We are joined now by a man who does an unbelievable job covering the Eagles and has for a good amount of time. We'll find out exactly how long for the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeff_McLane. And of course, check out his work as well at Inquirer.com. What year is this, Jeff, you grizzled veteran?
Yeah, I know. When did that happen?
I didn't hear you, Jeff. What is it?
All right, yeah, number 14 for me.
14. Wow.
Damn. All right. It's good. It's good. And amazing how you're 21 and it's been 14 years since
I know.
Crazy how that math works out, Jeff. But
real young.
Yes, I hear you. As Barrett's pooch makes an appearance on the program. We like it. So give me your overall, Jeff. Just give me one thing that you said yesterday. That kind of stood out to me, that you kind of left a mark, an indelible mark on you that was good, bad, indifferent, goofy, whatever. Give me one thing from yesterday, your first day back.
Oh, wow. It was 58-minute practice.
Exactly. Yes.
I think
well, let's start there then, Jeff. Is that they were the least injured team last year? You know, Nick Sirianni talked about it. It's a process.
They finished 11th or something like that.
Well, that was it. That were his words, I guess, or Howie's words. I don't know, but
that's not true.
What's your sense here? What's your sense of why they're are they going the right direction here, or should they be practicing more?
No, I mean, certainly they were much more improved in terms of the health department last year. I think they finished 11th in Football Outsiders adjusted games lost to injury. And that was after the 3 previous years when I think of the combined 3 years, only the Jets and the 49ers had more adjusted games lost to injury than the Eagles. So certainly there was an improvement. I don't know if the sample is large enough to say that this is the reason why they didn't have as many soft tissue injuries last year as they had in the previous 3 years. But certainly the Eagles believe so. We saw last year the kind of lessening of how strenuous and intense practices were. Nick was more inclined to give them walkthrough days this year, even more so. Instead of 14 days in the first 2 weeks of camp leading up to the preseason game, they only have 10 days of practice. So there's now 4 walkthroughs. And we even saw in the spring, there was only really essentially 5 practices that they had. And they believe that this is how you combat the amount of soft tissue injuries that we see pile up over many training camps throughout the NFL, and that the Eagles certainly have had over the years. A lot of the injuries you can't avoid, ACLs, Achilles, for the most part, those types of injuries, broken bones, etc. But the soft tissue ones, certainly there are ways to lessen the number of those, and the Eagles believe that practicing less and not as hard will be the reason why that they'll be one of the healthier teams this coming season.
Hey, Jeff, how frustrating.
Jeff, let me follow. Do they make up more in the film room because they're not on the field as much? Is there more time made up, or is that just kind of it? When they're done, they're done.
Well, they're doing more. Like, I think they're spending more time on the walkthroughs or the speed walkthroughs, as Nick calls them. That's how they kind of get their on-field time in terms of learning the offense and the defense and getting to know the plays. In terms of getting game ready, in terms of conditioning. Yeah. They believe that that's enough, and what these guys do in terms of the locker room and some of the other conditioning activities that the Eagles sports science staff have them partake in.
Hey, Jeff, as a daily observer of an Eagles practice, how frustrating is it from your perspective of having even more of a condensed opportunity to watch these guys, to get a feel for what you're looking at. It's got to drive guys like you nuts who write daily stories, daily columns, and is always looking for something a little different to grasp and to write about.
And honest, to kind of backtrack a little bit too, I'm not saying this is, like I think we joke a little bit about just because we all four of us have been around a while, and we know the two-a-days, and we know what Andy Reid's training camps were like, and even before that, Dick Vermeil was ridiculous. They started in July, and they had 6 preseason games.
Yeah.
That was overkill probably, and I think the advances that have been made in science and technology, et cetera, they don't think it's necessary, and I don't think there's any reason to suggest that maybe it isn't. I know that there are plenty of medical guys out there, trainers that I've talked to around the NFL, that believe that NFL players still need to be trained like boxers to prepare them for the rigors of the season. So there's definitely 2 ways of still looking at this. In terms of my job, I don't expect the Eagles to care, and nor do I. And nor do I really make that much of a big of a deal about it. It's just we have to find alternative ways to cover the team if we're not going to get as much access. And certainly we've dealt with that now over the last 2 years because of all the restrictions that were placed upon what we could do in terms of the pandemic. But yeah, certainly we have 4 less days that we can kind of watch these guys and get a handle on what they can do, and also in terms of talking to them, what's happening in terms of our access to them. After practices is pretty much the same as it was last year. We are, as far as I can tell, are going to be back in the locker room once the season starts. And it's not about me. I think it's really about the fans and the stories and the information and the inside access that they want about the team that they love so much. That's hopefully what we try to provide.
Well, let me ask you this, Jeff. I mean, going into last year, going into the meat and bones of the schedule when we first started, they went 2-6 or something like that. 2-5. Now, I mean, I understand they just learned that system. Guys just learned what it was to be a player under Nick Sirianni. Do you think it'll be a lot different going into this year, or with them not practicing a lot, will they have basically the same results going into the beginning of the year also?
I think it's fair to. I wrote something myself that it's fair to point out that they got off to a slow start last season.
Right.
They came out blazing though in the first game. I mean, it didn't look like they were, they weren't conditioned for that game. And there was a lot written last year heading into that first game. I felt like it just had more to do with the talent and the coaching and the quarterbacks they faced in those first 7 games more than anything. That being said. There was, during those 3 years that the Eagles suffered a lot of injuries, there were some staffers there that felt that Doug Peterson, he started to kind of pull the reins off of how hard his practices were. If you recall, the first year he got there, it was tough. It was kind of like in the mold of what Andy Reid had done, certainly with not as much since the CBA kind of cut down on the number of practices and how long they could be. And there were some people who felt the fact that Doug kind of eased up, that guys were suffering injuries early in the season because of that, and that there was a direct correlation. The Eagles didn't. I mean, they had the injury to Brooks. They had the injury to BG.
Graham.
Those weren't. Those were kind of freakish type injuries. They didn't have a lot of soft tissue injuries early on. So I don't know. It's hard to say definitively whether there is some correlation between how much they practice and how hard they practice and whether they're suffering these types of injuries in the season. But there are players that have to learn the scheme, and they have muscle memory, and you want them to run through those plays at the highest level possible. They will have these 2 weeks of inter-squad I hate to say 2 weeks. They'll have 2 sessions of inter-squad practice against both the Dolphins and the Browns. You can flip those 2 in terms of the order of them. It'll be Browns and then the Dolphins. And that's 2 days each of inter-squad practice, and they'll use those to evaluate and get the starters ready. And when the preseason games are played, it'll be mostly the backups.
Jeff, I personally don't care what T-shirt Nick Sirianni's wearing. He had the Hurts on yesterday, but some people view it as maybe they're concerned that he's too much of a player's guy, that he maybe won't bring the hammer down, that he's trying to be too much of a buddy. I don't buy it. I think it's his personality. I think it's fun, in fact. But do you worry at all that he's maybe not? He can't be hard enough at times on these guys?
No, because I've seen it up close already.
Yeah,
I mean, last training camp, I mean, he wasn't afraid to call out guys in the middle of practices, and I heard at various points last season that he would bring the hammer down. So I don't think, I've written about this, and I wrote a little bit about this summer when I spent some time with Nick away from the field. He's got a temper. He's a hot-blooded Italian, man. I mean, like he can be a screamer. And it's not just, what we saw a lot of officials on the sidelines, et cetera, at that. I mean, he'll bust it. He'll bust the vein every now and then on players. And so I don't think that is any area of concern from me. But he likes to, but he'll still love them up too. He'll call them out when they need to be called out, but also love them up, and maybe overly so. But I think that's what you need out of today's NFL coaches.
I forgot about the love them up stuff, man.
Yeah, you know how it is. The emotional intelligence to kind of these guys, they need to be. And Nick spoke about this a little with us in June, and he says he's learning this as well. He's realizing how much players need to be coaxed and how much of their egos that need. I mean, he didn't use the exact words, but essentially how much of their egos need to be coaxed, and he has
the way of athletes.
It is. I mean, it's the way a lot of us are. I mean, who doesn't want to be told that you're doing a good job? Yeah. So sometimes you need it. Even the greatest players around. I mean, Tom Brady needed it from Belichick at times. So I think Nick has a pretty good handle on that locker room.
Hey, Jeff, in the first segment of the show, we were talking about some of the training camp darlings that are in camp. One of the names I brought up was Carson Strong. And this guy's one of the more intriguing people in this Eagles camp. He had the talent to be a first-round pick. He was projected to go in the 4th or 5th round. He doesn't get drafted. And it all goes back to the multitude of knee injuries that he's had, and people refer to him as a stationary target. But when you look at him play the game, the throws he could make, wasn't afraid to put a tight spiral in a small window 30 yards down the field. Is he would you consider him a sleeper in this camp as a guy who could possibly shock a few people given an opportunity?
It's funny you bring that up, Gunnar. I was talking with another reporter about Strong coming off the first practice, and you wouldn't think that he's right now the 4th quarterback on the team, and some of it has to do with the fact that I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and he didn't look great. I mean, the throw looks good, as you mentioned. He's got the arm talent. Mm-hmm. It's that knee that really dropped him off of draft boards and why he was undrafted. He was told not to play last season. He decided that he wanted to play partly because he felt he owed it to his team and his teammates.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think that's maybe that's kind of a storyline. I don't think so, from what I understand. So he's got that intangible off the field. I think what could happen is the Eagles haven't really had a guy that they could, a young quarterback that they could bring in and develop. I mean, they had that with Nate Sudfeld. They haven't had it since him, and that didn't really turn out so well. But Carson Strong is potentially that guy. And I would say right now, most likely to be that 3rd quarterback who makes slips on the roster. In terms of the ceiling, I mean, I'm not going to go as far as he's going to compete with Jalen Hurts or even make the Eagles believe that this guy could be the answer if Jalen Hurts isn't the guy this year. But let's say he's really good. Maybe Minshew, if a quarterback goes down, or a team that still maybe needs a starter, maybe he's a guy that you would feel is expendable, depending upon what you get in return. If you feel Strong could play right away in case Jalen Hurts gets hurt.
I heard a lot of noise around Zach McPherson. Zach McPherson was my guy. Before we even picked up Bradbury, I was a strong advocate for McPherson. I heard he had a pretty good day yesterday.
Yeah, he shined in camp last year. Yep. He looked like he could play. He belonged. He didn't look like this was a guy that was totally over his head. He could play at this level. And when he got in there the few times he did last season, he did fine.
Yep.
So I agree with you. I think McPherson's an NFL cornerback. Is he a starting caliber cornerback? I don't know about that, but I think they feel comfortable having him as that 3rd guy on the outside in case they need him. He's certainly got stuff to learn. as all cornerbacks do. It's a tough position. You have to have a short memory to play that spot in the NFL. But in talking to him over the year, I haven't got to know him as well as I normally would have had we been in the locker room, et cetera, all the other stuff. But I do like what I hear out of him whenever he does talk. So I want to see a little more out of him too as well this camp.
Jeff, in your estimation, what you're hearing maybe in the offseason or whatever what you saw yesterday, however you want to slice it, what's your sense on what Jalen Hurts worked on the most this offseason?
I think his footwork. And you hear that from a lot of quarterbacks that head to Southern California to work out with Tom House and his crew and Adam Dato. And it was the same way with Carson Wentz years ago. A lot when Carson would sail passes or et cetera, it wasn't really more about the arm. It was more about what was happening down below and how you're getting your feet aligned and setting them and having the proper stability, or making sure that you're moving in the right direction, you're aligned the right way when you're throwing. And I think when Jalen has had accuracy issues, that's been a big reason why. So I think that's what I'm going to kind of focus on watching that. I'm not, quote unquote, an expert, but I think I've watched enough to know what looks right and what doesn't look right. He looked pretty good yesterday, I thought, in terms of like his mechanics. When he threw that interception, it was because he was late, and I think it was a second or third read in the progression. Whatever. I mean, it's one practice. Who really cares about it in the big picture? But he's going to have those moments, and I don't think too much should be made about that. But when the inter-squad practices start, and certainly when the season starts, he's got to show that that's an area in which he is improved.
Jeff, what are we to make of John Hightower's status with his team? I mean, his rookie year, he's in 13 games, 346 snaps for Doug Peterson last year, 11 snaps buried on the practice squad. And when they could have activated him for that playoff game against Tampa, they activated another wide receiver. I mean, does he have a shot to make this team?
Gunnar, I love it, man. You're such a football guy. Like,
thank you.
Talking about the rookie quarterback and John Hightower. And again, another funny thing. He was a guy I'm watching. I'm like, Hightower is still here. Like, see what I mean?
Unbelievable.
But you know how these draft picks sometimes, especially at the wide receiver position, you need wide receivers in camp. I mean, they got honestly, there was one guy that is it Carrick Whitehall? Carrick Whitehall.
Yeah.
I think he was on the COVID list. And I'm like, is he a D-back? That sounds like a D-back. That's got a D-back name.
Sounds like a D-back.
How they shuffle guys in and out. But Hightower's a guy I noticed out there. And I'm like, okay, it didn't go so well for him. Just Hightower. I just even recall back when Doug Peterson was trying to force him in the lineup and they're throwing these deep passes to him and interceptions were happening. And all of a sudden, they realized later in that season that Quez was the guy that really had the talent, not John Hightower. No, I don't think Hightower is going to make the roster.
Well, what about either one of the return kids that we're talking about? Just Allen. Allen's 16. He hadn't played football since 2016, and then you have Covey. With them not really playing special teams and other positions. I mean, like they're returners, yes, but I mean, I can't see either one of them going down on kickoff return. I mean, playing kick return, kickoff, punt return, all that stuff. How do they make the team? How can they make the team? Or is it just a foregone conclusion they're going to be out of here?
I mean, yeah, you got to be kind of very special in terms of that ability, because like you're saying, you need to do. If you're one of the bottom roster guys, you got to be able to do a bunch of different tasks.
Right.
You need to be versatile. Mm-hmm. And honestly, when you look at this roster, there aren't. Not only are there not many position battles in terms of startings and even kind of like the second teamers, there aren't many spots on the roster at the bottom. Yeah. You're going to have to really show something here if you're an undrafted guy or if you're a guy that they kind of signed as a free agent.
But it bodes well. It bodes well for us because that's a sign of a good team.
Yeah, for the Eagles, yeah. I mean, right. They've had teams like this before, rosters like this before. And it ended up being a team that did pretty well. So I think that's why there is optimism on this team. That being said, there's a lot that's unanswered, and there's a lot of questions to be answered. Excuse me. In terms of the punt returning, they had Rager up there first yesterday. I don't know if that's how it's going to pan out based upon the way last season finished, but it could. Rager's probably still going to be here based upon his contract and what they, in terms of his ability. There's not like this kid can't do it. He's just got to get mentally straight.
Who, Jeff, go on the other side. How do you think they are going to most utilize, or in your opinion, best utilize Hassan Reddick? I heard even yesterday, and you tell me because you were there, I wasn't. And I know this is just kind of random stuff sometimes. He was dropping back into coverage. I don't know if that's the best way to utilize him, but what's your sense of how they are going to use him?
Well, he's going to have to do it if he's going to play that Sam spot. And even if he was on the other side, he's going to have to do it a little bit too. But he's much more natural doing it. I mean, as you guys recall, when he was drafted by the Cardinals, it was as an inside linebacker. So he knows how to drop into coverage. Was he great at it? No. I mean, that's why they kind of moved him back to where he's a natural guy, and edge rush. That's what he did best at Temple. But, I would say like 130 snaps is probably how many of the, let's say, 700 that he plays he'll have to drop, maybe even less than that. You just gotta kind of in certain looks make sure that threat is there to opposing offenses. Oh, he could do this, do it enough, and he can do it and not look terrible doing it. Like, let's say the way that Derek Barnett last year, he can't do it. I mean, again, you can do it a few times, and hopefully they don't throw your way. If you're in a zone, you're in the right spot. But Reddick can do it better. He can do it better than Jannard Avery. Upgrade not only certainly in terms of how he can rush off the edge, but I think in terms of also coverage. Maybe not run stopping. That would be the issue that I have with Hassan.
Okay,
get eaten up by blockers off the edge.
Are you confident in Gannon and his ability to flip flop back and forth and teach those guys how to, use those different techniques when it concerns to the different defenses he's trying to switch to? Like, it's two gapping to one gapping. Two gapping when you're running that 30 front, one gapping when you're running the 4 down front. That's going to be a lot for these players to get. Does he have the guys in place that can do that and allow them to run those multiple fronts?
Well, he's got more than he had last year. I will say that. It was an issue. I mean, he had guys playing. I mean, Tyron Jackson and Josh Sweat were playing that 4-eye tech spot and on base downs, and they would just run at those guys and bowl them over, and it wasn't good. Now you get Josh Davis. Really, there's like a domino effect with him being in that middle spot, especially against the run defense. I mean, he has Fletcher and Javon in the 4-eye tech spot on each side where they should be, where Milton Williams should be. It really sets things up so you don't have to slide some of those outside guys into inside spots. Brandon Graham can do it. Bigger guy. He can hold down and two gap, and he's done it before. So there isn't as much. They have better personnel in terms of that, Barrett. But as you said, there is more to do. I mean, like when you had Jim Schwartz's offense, it was for a lot of those guys up front, pin your ears back and go.
Yep.
Which they love.
Different. Yep.
Yeah, I mean they love to do.
Fletch hates two gapping.
No, Fletch does not like it. He was willing to come back. Now certainly he had 12 million reasons for coming back. He would have gotten that on the open market, but he wants to retire. It seems like, and he's obviously good enough still, I think, to make an impact up front.
Hey,
Jeff, what? Oh, go ahead, Derek.
Jeff, what is your most intriguing storyline for this camp in general?
I mean, Jalen Hurts is such an obvious one, so hopefully I can think of one off the top of my head that's more intriguing. Let me think. How about the offensive line? It's considered like the strength of the team, but they're older. Jason Kelsey's 34, 35. Lane's over 30. I know that they got Landon. Isaac's kind of getting up there, and you have Mailata. So you have two young guys, but you have some older guys that have battled some injuries. Kelsey though hasn't missed a game in 100 and whatever it is. That being said, there comes a point where, are you on the upslope, or you're in the downslope? Or are you still kind of treading in terms of your ability? And
other times undefeated.
Right, as well as anyone, Barrett. Look, Jeff Stoutland's as good as they come, coaching the offensive line. They've been able to mitigate all the injuries that they've had for the most part over the years. But and Howie, to his credit, has done a very good job of having depth there. They've already kind of thought about beyond Jason Kelsey by having Cam Jerkins in there. He was actually starting. Kelsey couldn't practice yesterday because he's coming back from COVID. So they have guys in place. You have Jack Driscoll, who you could slide into the starting spot. You have Andre Dillard, who is still on the team. Is still a founder. He's the backup left tackler. When he went in there last year, he wasn't horrible. I mean, was he great? No. So they have the depth there. But that being said, you want to rely on Andre Dillard for an extended period. It's Cam Jerkins if he has to get tossed in there. So I think that's something maybe I would watch. Maybe that wasn't the obvious one and the first thing that popped in my head. But, as the Eagles go, as the offensive line goes, a lot of times so go the Eagles.
Jeff, last one for me. What's your sense? Because I'm not sure a lot of people know a lot about Shane Steichen. We found that he took over the play calling. He's the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. But, what tendencies does he have? What does he like to do? Do you have a good sense for him?
I do a little bit. So Nick had kind of revealed even later last season about the switch. He kind of said it was more like, we're both doing it together. And then I found out in March that it was more significant than that. I mean, they basically gave Shane the play calling responsibilities, and that's something he had done before with the Chargers. Some may say not very well, even though Justin Herbert had a great rookie season. Some people felt like maybe some of his late game play calling wasn't that good, and maybe you held him back a little bit in terms of what Herbert could do, as we saw in his second season. But I think Shane's a little bit of a natural. Look, they wouldn't have people become play callers or this, that, or the other thing if it wasn't a big thing. I know Nick has kind of downplayed it a little bit, and I do think to some extent it's not that huge of a deal. It is Nick's offense. Nick is coming up with the game plan. They are talking throughout the entire game, but there is a skill set in terms of like being the guy. There's a rhythm you get into. There's they're seeing maybe things a step ahead of time. There is it is an ability, and I think Shane. I think from what I understand, look, he's a former quarterback.
Watch it. Yep.
He likes to throw it. They want to be a pass offense. Despite what people in this town still insist upon. Look, you can win running the ball. Certainly, the Eagles turned the season around by realizing that was a strength that they needed to emphasize. But the Eagles don't want to be that offense because they know long term, if you want to be a sustainable playoff caliber team that can compete for championships, you got to throw the ball. You got to have an elite passer. Now, is Jalen going to be that guy? That whole argument comes into it. But getting back to Shane, I think Shane is a competent play caller. Certainly when I asked him about it, and just to confirm it, when we asked him about it in May, he was like, oh yeah, he wants it out there.
Okay.
Shane wants to everyone know that what he's doing it, and that, certainly he wants to be a head coach at some point. So he'll do it again this season. And if things go very well, who knows what may happen. But that's the reason why you want your head coach to be the play caller a lot of times.
Yeah.
To me, that's the bigger question, is Nick giving it up. You lose, let's say Shane's great, you lose him, all of a sudden Nick can go back to doing it, but then maybe you have to find another guy. That's why Jeffrey Lurie, one of the reasons why he loves getting offensive play calling head coaches.
Let me ask you this. My last question. Do they have enough at the running back position to sustain the entire year? I mean, we don't have any big backs going there on 3rd and 1, 4th and goal, those type of situations. We know Sanders' health, Gainwell's a little dude, Scott's a little dude, and then we don't know what we're going to get from Brooks, from Kennedy Brooks or Jason Huntley.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to end up being those three guys on the roster. As you said, there's no bigger guy. Jordan Howard's gone. Who, when he ran last year, he ran well. Injuries have been an issue with him. Miles is a big guy. I mean, he's a bigger back. I mean, that kid is jacked. Yeah. Sometimes I think he doesn't use that, he doesn't finish as much as he probably could when he runs. We all know this is a big year for him. He's going into the last year of his rookie contract. He's got something to prove. He has said it so himself, also in terms of how his health was last year. Kenny Gainwell, they like him. I wonder they're going to try and use him as an X factor guy in terms of the passing game. I wonder if they're going to push it too much. And is he that good of a runner? And Boston just keeps doing his thing. He's a guy that always feels underappreciated. I think he wanted to kind of maybe test to see what else he could get out there, and instead return to the Eagles at a contract that wasn't probably what he had liked. But he runs hard. I mean, I think they're fine in that running back crew.
I like it.
Yeah, it's not, again, it's not a super position of need around the NFL most times anymore, unless that's what you build. You have a guy that's special like Derrick Henry. But I think that's a good crew.
Hey, yeah. Jeff, do you think that Tart is an upgrade at safety?
Well, they didn't really have much there.
I know.
Yeah. There's a reason why he was available so late in the free agency. He's played and he's logged a lot of snaps. He played in a pretty good defense with the 49ers. I don't think it was more because of him than it was because of a lot of the other guys and the scheme that they had there. So it'll be interesting to see. So Anthony Harris didn't practice yesterday because he was coming back from COVID. So you had Kevon Wallace opposite Marcus Epps, and Wallace didn't look so great. So I don't think he's the answer if Tart isn't the answer. So it's probably I think it's going to be Epps, and they really like Epsy, and it's going to be Harris again. But is that strong enough? Is that a strong enough pair back there compared to what they've had previously with Jenkins and Rodney McLeod? So. That to me would be an area of weakness.
Jeff, we appreciate it, man. What's the next story for folks to be looking out for, both at Inquirer.com and at Jeff_McLane on Twitter?
I don't know. You tell me. I mean, I'll be at practice doing my observations every day, and we'll see.
Barrett's going to be there. You can do a full-length Barrett piece tomorrow. He's going to be there in person.
I'm not going as media, though. I'm going as an alumni player, so I'll be on the field this time, man. So
there you go.
I got it, man.
Hey, Jeff, get Barrett to tell you off record some of the scuttlebutt he's hearing on the field. That's
yes. There's your source, Jeff. You get a killer source.
Yeah, we probably talk to some of the same guys.
Jeff, we appreciate it. Thanks for all your time today, man.
Thank you, man.
I appreciate you.
Talk to you soon. Continued success. Thank you. That's Jeff McLane from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Great dude, guys. Man. Great dude, man.
Yeah, he's the best. He is a reporter in every sense of the word. He will go after people. He's not afraid. He exposes things, and just does a really good job covering the team. That's for sure. All right, a little later in the show, guys, we're going to run through both the AFC and the NFC. Who comes out of those conferences? Who will be the champion of both conferences? Who are the surprise teams? Who are the teams that are going to disappoint in each conference?